Hey everyone, in this video, let us build an end-to-end data analytics project, mainly using SQL, but we shall also use Python and Google Sheets for a couple of the tasks. Now, the data that I'll be using to build this project is going to be taken from a very popular property listing website in Poland by the name Otodom.pl. Now, you might know that I had recently relocated to Warsaw, Poland, and when I was relocating here, I had several questions, especially related to the apartments, like how much would it cost on an average to rent an apartment in Warsaw? How expensive is Warsaw compared to other cities in Poland? And within Warsaw, which suburb I should look for to find affordable apartments? And how much would it be cost me basically to rent an apartment versus buying an apartment, etc., etc. Now, these are the questions that anyone would have when they are moving to a new city, right? And that is why I wanted to build this project, which can help me to answer this question. So in short, the overall flow of this project is we go into Otodom.pl. We need to scrape the data from Otodom.pl and load it into a database. Now, instead of writing a programming script to scrape the data, what I did was I took help from a platform, a web data platform called Bright Data. Now, Bright Data is also sponsoring this video. I'll talk more about them when we come to that stage. Okay, so Bright Data will help us to scrape the data, and Bright Data also has a feature to basically export the scraped data directly into Snowflake. Now, Snowflake is the database that I'll be using. Basically, Snowflake is a cloud-based data warehouse. It's kind of like a relational database which uses SQL. Once we have the data in Snowflake, we are going to do the initial analysis, and then we will need to do some transformation. Now, there are a couple of transformation for which I was not able to do it only in Snowflake, so I had to take help from Python. Now, for one of the transformation, I had to use Python. So I connected Python to my Snowflake. I extracted the data from Snowflake and put it into Python. And then in Python, I did the transformation and then loaded the data back into Snowflake. And then there was another transformation for which I needed to use Google Sheets. So what I did, I connected Snowflake to Python. From Python, I connected to Google Sheets. In Google Sheets, I did the transformation and then send the data back to Snowflake. Now, if you do not want to use Python or Google Sheets, there are basically alternate ways which I'm going to mention later on in the video. Okay, and once I had all the data ready in Snowflake, all the transformed data available in Snowflake, after that I basically cleaned the data and then I analyzed the data and then I built the reports to answer the questions that I had prepared with regards to the property listing in Poland. Now, when I was building this project, there were several different tasks that I had to do in order to complete the project. And if I try to cover everything in a single video, then this video would have been extremely long. And that is why I'm going to split this video into three different parts. Now, this is the first part. In this part, basically, I'm going to scrape the data and make the data available in the database. And I'm going to do some initial transformation of the data. Okay. And then in the second part of the video, I'm basically going to do the advanced transformation that I talked about using Python and Google Sheets. And finally, in the last part, that is where I'm basically going to build the reports to answer the questions that I had related to property market in Poland. And I'll make sure that all the three videos of this video series will be released within 2 days of each other. So you don't have to wait for long to basically complete the whole project. Now straight away, let's start the project first by looking at the Otodom.pl website and try to understand what exactly that website looks like. Okay, so as I told you, the first thing is let's get into Otodom.pl website and let's just check out their website. Now let's say I chose flats and for rent, and let's say the city Warsaw, and if I click on the result, I'll basically see all the different ads for rented apartment in Warsaw. And let's say I choose any one of them. Okay, and if I click on any one of them, you see that I have all the information like the title of the and the total rent of that particular apartment, the location, how many rooms it has, what is the total area or the size of that apartment. You'll basically see all the information here. You also have description and many other information. So what I basically want is I want to scrape all of this information from this ad, but not just from this one ad, but from all the different thousands of ads that are available on this platform. Right? So in order to scrape this data, instead of writing a program to scrape all of this data, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take help from Bright Data. Now, Bright Data is basically a web data platform that has its own web scrapers that helps them to scrape publicly available data from any website. They are very efficient and they basically do a fantastic job. If you are looking for scraping data from any website, this is a very good place to look for. Okay. Now, what you can basically do is I'm going to leave a link to this website in the description below. You can check them out. You'll also find, I think, a coupon code which you can basically use to get some free credits. You can use that free credits to purchase any data set. Okay, so after that, just create a free account on with Bright Data, and then you can just click on user dashboard. And then in user dashboard, just click on view data products. And once you are here, now this is a section you will basically see where all the data sets that you have requested them, you will find it here. You can then from here, you can either move it to Snowflake or Amazon S3 bucket, etc. We'll see that in a short while. But before that, let's get into this dataset marketplace. Now, this is basically the place where you'll see all the data that Bright Data has already scraped and kept it available for anyone to download. Now what I'm looking for is Otodom.pl, and that is coming under real estate. So I just go to real estate, I click on Otodom.pl. This will basically show me the dataset. I'll click on view dataset, and here I'll see all the different information. So there are 15 attributes, that is 15 columns, the total number of records, over 300k records, and then you will basically see other information about this dataset. You can also see some sample records here, all the different columns, all the different values, you can basically see it. Okay, now let's say you do not want to purchase the entire dataset, you just want some sample dataset, then you can download the free sample dataset. Okay, so you just click on this sample data download button, and then you can download it using JSON or CSV. Okay, and I think it gives you around 1000 records. Actually, 1000 records is actually pretty good if you want to just play around some simple data sets. Okay, now let's say you do not want all the 300k records, but you want some specific data set based on your requirement. Let's say you're only interested in 1 BHK houses, the houses with 1 room. Okay, then you can just click on filter, and you can filter the data. Okay, and let's say I choose number of rooms, I say is lower than 2. Okay, and then I can click on create subset. This is basically going to give me a subset of that data set. So this, you can see, only has 17.5k records. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going into let's say my data sets. Okay, now what I did was I went to datasets marketplace. As I showed you, I went to real estate, I clicked on Otodom.pl, and I had actually downloaded that whole data set. Okay, so once I click on download, then all the downloaded data sets, I'll basically see it here. Okay, now in this, I'm just going to click on this part, which basically has 311k records, because I had downloaded this, I think, some time back. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I can see the sample data set, and I can see how many attributes and all the other information. This file is 776 MB. Okay, now what I want to do is either I can download this data set and put it into my local machine. So if I want to use some other databases, then you can basically download it as a CSV, and then you can export it into or import it into your database tables and then build the project. But what I want to do is I want to send this data set into Snowflake. So I'll click on export, and then here I will choose the option, let's say Snowflake. Okay, I can also send it to Amazon S3 or Google Cloud Storage or Azure Storage, etc. But what I want to do is I want to send it into Snowflake, and I want to send it in the JSON format. I can also choose the format in which I want to send it. Okay, so I'll choose JSON format, I'll choose Snowflake, and then here I need to provide all the different informations. Now this is the information that I need to provide about Snowflake. Okay, so the account, database, and everything. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, in order to provide this information, you first need to have your Snowflake account. So let's go and create a new Snowflake account for free from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say Snowflake. I'll just search for Snowflake, and I think you will get this one, snowflake.com. Okay, now once you are here, you can just click on start for free. Okay, and then you can just mention your details. I'm just going to do that. Tawfiq, I'll say tech TFQ, and I have created a demo email for this purpose. I'm just going to give that techtfq@demo.techtfq@gmail.com, and I'll say my company is TechTFQ, and my role is, I think, developer or engineer, and I'll say United States. Let it be as it is, and I'll just click continue. And here I'm just going to choose standard. I'll say AWS, and I'll say I have read all the rules, and from here I'm just going to say I want this for personal learning and development, and I'll say why are you using Snowflake for? I'll just choose other, and I'll say I want it for the preferred languages, SQL and Python. Okay, so I click submit, and now what happens is they have basically sent an email to the email ID that I gave, that is demo.techtfq@gmail.com. So I'll go into my email. Now this is a brand new email that I created for this video. I'll be probably deleting this after this video. Okay, so it might take a few seconds. So let's just wait for Snowflake to send that email. Okay, as you can see, I have received the email. It's basically to activate your Snowflake account. You can do one thing, just click on this, click to activate, and it should basically take you to the Snowflake account. Okay, now once you are here, you just provide your username. So I'm just going to provide my username as Taufik. You just, whatever you provide, this is what you will need to use when you're doing your connection to Snowflake. Okay, I'm going to give a password here. Okay, and I'll confirm the password. And I'll say get started. Okay, and I think that's all. You just need to do this much and you basically have your new Snowflake account created. And you see that it's basically free for 30 days. It's a trial period. For 30 days you can use it. And I think this is good enough for our project, or basically to learn everything about Snowflake. You can just create a free account and you can use it. Now from here, what I'm going to do is, in order to basically create a window where we can write our SQL queries and everything, I can just click on plus, I can click on SQL worksheet, and this is basically where we can do everything. Okay, now currently I see that there is no database selected, and even the data warehouse is the default one. Okay, so the first thing that we will do is, we need information about this Snowflake account, which we need to pass here. So we need the account information. That is, we are in Bright Data now. Here we need to provide the account. Now, how do you get the account name of your Snowflake account? So what you do is, you go back to that email that you received, and here you will basically see a link, right? Just click on that link. This is basically going to take you to the login page of Snowflake. Okay, and what you are going to do is, you just copy after this HTTPS, after this / whatever you see until the .snowflake, just copy that. This is kind of your account name. Okay, and I'm just going to store this account name somewhere in my file, just because we will need to reuse this when we use Python. Okay, so this is your account name, and I'm not going to click sign in because I have already connected to Snowflake here. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll go back to Bright Data. I'll provide the account name that I have given here. Okay, then comes the databases. Okay, currently I have not created any database or any tables or any stage here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I can probably create it here, but for one of the tasks that we'll be doing in the future, we need a SnowSQL client. Okay, now SnowSQL is basically the command prompt client for Snowflake. So what we'll do is, first and foremost, let us install SnowSQL. Now, in order to install SnowSQL, what you just do is go to SnowSQL download, just search for that in your browser, and I think you should see this page, which basically you can use to download. Here you can choose your operating system. I am using Mac, so I'll just choose SnowSQL for Mac, and you can see that it is basically downloading the DMG file, which we can use to install. So, and then you just install it. It's simple installation. I'll just install for all users of this computer, and then I think I'll just enter my password. So it's just a simple installation. Let's just finish the installation and then let's use SnowSQL. Okay, once you have installed SnowSQL, it will also give you information about how you can connect to SnowSQL. So I'm just going to use this information. So I'll just close this. I'll move this to bin, and then in order to connect to SnowSQL, you just go into terminal. Okay, if you are using Windows, you will, when the installation is complete, it's going to give you information of how you can connect in Windows as well. So just make sure that you take a note of that. Okay, now I'm in my terminal. So what I want to do is, I want to connect to SnowSQL. So I mentioned SnowSQL, and then I say the account name. The account name is basically what we copied from the URL a few minutes back. So I'm just going to put that, and then my username -u, and then I say my username is Taufik. Okay, now it's going to basically ask, hopefully, for the password. We'll enter the password, and that's all. Okay, so let's just wait. You get this warning messages. Ignore that, just enter the password, and I'm just going to enter the password that I have given, and hopefully it should connect. Yeah, you can see that I have been connected now. So it's basically connecting to this compute_wh virtual warehouse, but there is no database or no schema selected. So first thing that we will do is, we will create a database, we'll create a virtual warehouse, and then we'll basically get started from there. Okay, so in order to create the database, I just need to use a simple command, create database, and I'm going to give the name like demo. Okay, as soon as the demo database is created, you can see that now this particular demo database is been selected. Okay, so currently I'm connected to the demo database, and public is kind of the schema that is by default available for every database. Okay, so that is done. Let me also create a simple data like virtual warehouse. Okay, now what is a warehouse? So generally in all other databases you would only know database and schema, but in Snowflake you also need to have a warehouse. Now warehouse is basically the one that is going to allocate resources for every computation that you do. When I say computation, when you run a query, when you do any operations of SQL, some resources will be used because Snowflake is a cloud-based data warehouse, and that resources will be used from the warehouse that you have selected. Okay, so based on that, the cost will be calculated. But for all the basic stuff that we are going to be doing, the cost is not going to be so much. And this is a 30-day free trial, so we have some credits, I think, which we can basically use for this 30-day free trial. Okay, so let's try to create a data warehouse. So I'm just going to say create warehouse, and I'm going to say demo underscore WH. And for now, I'll just not provide any other properties. Okay, so now the warehouse has been selected. You can see that the warehouse that I'm using currently is demo WH, and then the database is demo and the schema is public. So now what we will do is we'll go back to Bright Data. Here we need to provide some information. So the database that I have created is demo. I'll give that. Schema is public. And then it's also asking for something called a stage. Now stage, basically what we have seen in other databases that when we load data from file to a database, we load it into a table. But when it comes to Snowflake, when you have to load a file to a Snowflake table, first thing is you need to load it into a stage. Okay, now stage is something like it's a location which stores your data files. Okay, now first you need to store your whatever file you have, you need to store it into a stage, and then only from a stage you can load it into a table. Okay, so we will need to create a stage. So in order to create a stage, I'll come back to my SnowSQL. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run simple commands. Now the thing is, in order to create a stage, you need to basically, as I told you, stage is something that will hold your data files, right? Now your data files can be in many different formats like CSV, JSON, etc. So when you're creating your stage, you need to tell which format of the file it's going to kind of store, right? So the first thing is we are going to create a file format, and we are going to specify that it's going to be a JSON file because we are downloading a JSON file. So we'll create a file format for JSON, and then we are going to use that when creating our stage. Okay, so let's just create a file format. I'm just going to say create or replace file format. I'm just going to say JSON format, and then I'm just going to say type equal to JSON, and then I'm going to say strip outer array equal to true. Okay, now this is very important, this command, because this kind of will strip that square brackets that are present in the beginning and the end of your JSON file. If you skip this command and if you try to export this whole file, because it's like over 300 K records, it's like very huge file, it's going to throw an error. Okay, and the error will be because it's going to treat that entire data as one single record. It's actually not one record, but it's 300K plus records, right? So by giving this command, it's basically going to avoid that error. Okay, so I'm just going to create this JSON format. You can see that JSON format is created. Now let me create a stage. I'll just tell create or replace stage, and I'm just going to say Otodom underscore stage. Okay, and here I need to provide the file format. So I'll say file underscore format equal to the format that I just created, that is JSON underscore format. Okay, and I think that's all. So we have created the stage. Now what we are going to do is, the stage that we created is this one, Otodom underscore stage, and that is exactly what I'm going to give here, Otodom underscore stage, and the warehouse name is demo underscore WH, and now it's asking for role. Now role is basically, if you go into Snowflake and if you just click on, let's say, worksheet, and you click on, let's say, here on the top, you'll see that this, under this section, you'll see account admin. You see the role. Your role by default is account admin. Okay, so that is exactly what I'm going to provide, account admin, and then your username and password. My username is Taufik, and the password that I have given, I'll just mention it here. Okay, so I think that's all. Now I can basically test my connection. So I just click on test Snowflake. You can see that testing delivery method, and you can see that it's told, it has sent a sample data for as part of this test. Now in order to verify that, what we'll do is we'll go back to Snowflake. Now we'll stop using SnowSQL for now. Let's go back and use the UI that we have, okay, just because it will become easier for the purpose of doing this. Okay, so first of all, this worksheet, I'm just going to rename it to like Otodom Analysis. Okay, and then here I want to see, first of all, let's select our database. So we have created the demo database, and the virtual warehouse is going to be demo warehouse. Okay, now let's write a query to see the data in our stage. So I have created the stage, and I'm just going to say select star from the stage. The stage name was Otodom underscore stage. Okay, and if I just run this, you can see that I have got one record. Initially this was 0 actually. This particular record, you see the test field, test ID, it's actually populated because of the data, sample data that Bright Data had actually sent. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I want to load this entire data set, right? So I'll just click on submit. When I click on submit, you will basically, okay, so I'll just save this username password. You can see this message from Bright Data saying that delivery is in progress. We will notify you once we deliver your data set. So I'll click on OK, and then if I go to deliveries, you'll basically see that the status is running. Okay, and this generally takes, I think, 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, within 2 to 3 minutes, all of this data will be loaded to Snowflake, and then the status will change into done. Okay, so for now, let's go back to Snowflake. We have this Otodom underscore stage. That is the stage that we have. As I told you, first we need to load the data from Otodom, or basically whenever we are loading data in Snowflake, first we load the data from a file. We create a stage, we load it into a stage, okay, and then we need to load it into a table, right? So that means whatever data Bright Data is sending, right, this Bright Data, whatever the whole scraped data that Bright Data is sending, we need to create a table in Snowflake where we are going to store that. So as part of that, let's go ahead and create a table which is going to store our JSON data. Now JSON is a semi-structured file, right? So let's create a table. I'm just going to name it like create table Otodom underscore data dump. Okay, and I'm just going to create a table with one column. Okay, and the column is going to be JSON underscore data, and let's say I'm going to call it like it's basically of the data type variant. Okay, now variant is basically a special kind of a data type which is basically used to store semi-structured data. If you want to store semi-structured data from JSON file or some other type of files, then we generally create this column. Okay, so whatever data that we'll receive from Bright Data, it's going to be stored in this one particular column. Okay, now let's just go back to Bright Data and see. Okay, it's still running, so let's just wait. So let's create this table, and the next step is let's see the data in this table. Currently, I'm sure it's blank. Of course, it's blank because we are still waiting for the data to get loaded into this stage, right? Let's just wait, and I'll come back once the data has been loaded successfully by Bright Data into Snowflake. Okay, so as you can see, it is changed the status to done. That means all the data has been loaded. Now, if I query from my stage, generally when you want to query from the stage, you just put this @ symbol before your stage name. Okay, and you can just query it similar to a table. Okay, you can see that it's taking some time because the data that was loaded from Bright Data into this stage is actually pretty huge. It's over 700 MB of data, right? So let's just wait. Okay, as you can see, there is data loaded here, all the 311K records. Okay, I think there would be 2 extra records that probably was the test sample record that Bright Data sends. We'll remove that later on in this project. Okay, so now we have the data in stage. The next step is to load the data from this stage into this table that we have created. And how we can do that is by using a command called as copy into. So we say copy into the table name, okay, from the stage, that is this stage, and we say if there are any errors, so we say we pass in a parameter here or like a property for copy into. If there is any error, I want to skip that. Okay, so I don't want to abandon the whole copy, so I say skip file. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all. So this is basically going to copy all the data from the stage into this table that we have created. So now let me just run this command. and I think it might take a few seconds, so let's just wait. Okay, so the loading is successful. You can see that there were 3 separate data files. So the last one is basically the data file that I actually wanted to load, which has 311118 records. The first 2 are kind of the test files that Bright Data sends for the purpose of testing the connection. Okay, we'll remove this a little later in our project. Okay, now we have the data in this table. So the next thing is, let's just verify this data. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is, I'm just going to say select star, or I'll just select count of 1 from this table. It should have, yeah, it has all the data that we want. And now in order to see some sample data, I'm just going to say limit of 10. And if I run this, now you can see that I have the JSON data. Okay, now if I just copy any one of them and if I just put it here, you can see that this is pretty huge. And let me just make it a little big. And you can see that this is basically it's a semi-structured data. It's kind of like, it's a JSON file, right? So you have it like this, but you basically can see that I have the advertisement type here, the number of rooms, the description, the title of the apartment, everything is present in one single column, right? Now what I basically want to do is, this is not readable for me, right? I basically cannot do any analysis just by using this semi-structured data. So what I want to do is, from this semi-structured data in this table, which is under the variant column, I want to transform that into multiple different columns, so that each column that you see here should be loaded into separate table. And this process of loading all of this information in separately into each field is basically called as flattening of file. Okay, so let's do flattening of file by using simple queries. Okay, so for example, let me show you how you can do that, okay, for one particular sample. So let me just copy this here, and let's say I am interested in finding the price, okay, for these ads. So what I can just do is, I mention my column name JSON underscore data, because this is the column name, as you can see here, right? And I put a colon here, and then I mention the column name of which is present within this JSON. So that is, I know I have something called as price. If I run this, now we can see that all the price values are present. It's basically fetching here. Now I can basically create a column and put all of them into this particular column, right? But before I do that, I want to do some transformation. First of all, I see every value there is enclosed within the double quotes. So I want to remove that, right? So what I'll do is, I'll just use a simple replace function. I'll just pass in double quotes. And if I don't even need to pass the replacement string, it is automatically going to replace it with null values. So if I run this, now you can see that it's basically it's returning me the values without that double quotes. Now you can see that some places you might have the price to be null, because when ads are created in Otodom.pl, not everyone is going to carefully create the ad. Some of the ads might miss some information like prices or phone numbers, etc. Right? So there are some bad data that is available. So we will try to figure out that a little later. Okay, so this is basically how I can flatten data from this variant column and then load it into a proper relational database kind of a table. So instead of writing this whole query one by one in this video, because I know this video is going to be pretty long, I already have the script for that, and I'm just going to copy that script, and I'm just going to create that entire new flattened table. Okay, so this is the script. Now if I just show you this script, what I'm doing, I'm basically doing the same thing. I take JSON colon particular column name, let's say price or location, and then I'm replacing the double quotes, and then I'm converting it into a string, because the data type might be something else. I just want everything to be treated as string for now, and then I'm giving a column name. Okay, now for every column I'm doing the same except for one column, that is description. Okay, because the description column that was written from JSON, it basically has some HTML tags. Okay, so for example, if I just show you that, so let's say description. Okay, and if I just run this, and let's say I take one sample. Okay, and if I just put it, you can see that this is the whole description. But under this description, because description, I think it's a pretty big field, there are a lot of tags that are available, the HTML tags. Okay, and I do not want all of these tags to be present in my final data, right? So I want to remove these tags. So what I did, I used a regular expression function, the regexp underscore replace, and I just used this particular regex to kind of search for tags wherever there is the beginning of this less than symbol and there is like this greater than symbol. Whatever I find within this whole opening and closing of the tags, I'm just removing that whole of this. I'm just replacing it with blank value. Okay, so that is what this regular expression replace function does. Okay, so I'm basically creating all of that. So for example, let's say if I just show you how this transformation looks, if I just run this subquery here, you can see that by using this flattening method, all the values from that variant column is now showing up into single column. So advertisement type is here, balcony garden terrace is here, description is here, is for sales, price, the surface area, the title, URL, everything is coming here, right? But in addition to this, one more column that I want to create is basically a unique identifier. These records here do not have any unique identifier. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm using the row number window function and I'm creating a row number for every single record that I get. For example, if I run this whole query here, you can see that it's basically going to return all of this column that I mentioned here, and I'm getting an error, and I think the error is because of this. So let me run the query again. And now you can see that it's just creating this new column RN, that is the row number. Okay, now this one I just showed you for 10 records. Now let us create, now this whole query I can use to basically flatten my whole JSON data that I've received, and I'm going to put it into a table by the name Otodom data underscore flatten. Okay, so I'm just going to create this table with all of this data. So I'll run this, and this might take, I think, a few seconds. So let's just wait for that. Okay, it's done, and it's basically created this table. Now just let's look at this table. Okay, so if I do a select count of 1 from this table, I have 311120 records. Okay, now I know that 2 of these records are actually the test data file that Bright Data had sent. I want to remove them. How I can identify that is I can just I know URL is a field that is present for every ad, and I think for this test records there will be no data in URL. So I can just say where URL is null. Okay, and if I just run this, you can see that this is the last 2 record that was loaded. These are like the sample test records. Okay, which I do not want to have it in my final data set. So what I'll do, I'll delete these 2 records. So I'll say, I'll just copy this and I'll say delete from this table. Okay, so 2 records should be deleted. And now if I go into the total count, now this is exactly what I want. Okay, so this is the final list of data that I want. Using this, I'm going to do all my analysis and build this project. Okay, so now we have all the data that we need to build this project present in our Snowflake database. Okay, you can see that I have 311K and 118 records. Now, if I just show you a sample data set, you can see that I have all the different fields that I had scraped from otodom.pl using the Bright Data platform. Okay, so I have the description, the location, the price, the surface, the title, the URL, the number of rooms, etc. Okay, now there are a couple of problems in this. Okay, the first problem is with regards to the location. Here I have the coordinates. I do not have the exact address, like which city, which country, which suburb, pin code, etc. Right? I only have these coordinates. Now I had 2 options. The option number 1 was I reach out to Bright Data and ask them to provide me the exact address instead of this location. I did reach out to them and they said they can easily do that and they can give me the updated data set. Okay, but then I thought if I get always the data in a very clean manner, then what is the challenge that I have, right? Whenever we are working on real-time projects, we don't get the data in exactly how we want it, right? We have to do certain transformation in basically to solve the problem, right? And that is exactly what I thought. Okay, instead of asking everything from Bright Data, I thought let me take it like a challenge. Let me see how I can basically transform these coordinates into a proper address. Okay, and basically how I'm going to do that is by using Python, because I realize I cannot do that in SQL. So I will be using Python to do this transformation from coordinates to proper address. Okay, now how exactly I'm going to do that, I will be explaining that in the second part of this video series. Okay, which should release in the next 2 days. Now the second column that I wanted to transform was this column title. Now this is not really that important for the project, but still I wanted to take it like a challenge. You see that all this title is mentioned in Polish. I wanted to translate it into English. Now initially I thought I am going to do this with Python. In fact, I did do it with Python, but not for all the 300k records. I found some issue with the limitation on how many API calls can I do in Python. And then I realized a more easier way would be to just move it to Google Sheets. And in Google Sheets also, I have a way to translate this into English. Okay, so that is what I'm going to do. But again, this transformation of title and the location field using Python and Google Sheets will be covered in the second part of the video series. Okay, so for now, this is all we have in this part. We have all the data that we need, but we need to do the transformation in order to basically answer the questions that I have regarding the property market in Poland. I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, do check out the description. I'll make sure to leave all the scripts and sample data sets and everything that you need to build the project in my blog. I'll leave the link to my blog in the video description. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in 2 days with the second part of this video. Bye.